와주셔서 감사드립니다. 하고 좋은 이벤트 오늘 이렇게 함께 해주셔서 특별히 우리 부회장님, the purpose of the World Oka is really to, I think, bring more Korean products into the diaspora, where there's a lot of Koreans throughout the world, whether it's in the United States or North America, whether it's in South America, Africa, Europe, and really being able to use each of the individuals here today as really as those ambassadors to really push forward the wonderful culture, know-how, products, and services that Koreans have been able to provide in their own country throughout. And likewise, I think the people in South Korea, as well as the first generation, as Hwajang and Joajang and the others who gave the introductory remarks, really talked about the history and the purpose. It's really everyone here today who's going to be the leaders that really push forward and push forward, kind of the mantle that's been set forward, right? Korea is often called, as I believe Joy was saying earlier, kind of a miracle on the Han River, right? We're talking about history, occupation, and really being able to build all those things, and you see it all around us, right? It's already been kind of discussed, right? You see Samsung phones everywhere, right? If you watched the NBA Finals, you saw a commercial with Jay-Z promoting Samsung products, right? 20 years ago, who would have thought such a thing would be possible? You look at Kia, right? You see Kia cars, you go to Best Buy, you see washer and dryers from Samsung, you see TVs from LG. And you not only see Korean companies do that, you also see Korean Americans who come to this country really establish something great, right? I mean, you see a lot of women, right? They like to go to Forever 21 and buy a lot of clothes, and even in the fashion world, right? You have people like Don Chang really setting the tone in many ways, unbeknownst to many people in this country. And so, how do we continue to promote that through this educational seminars, through this workshop over the 3 days, and really help each of you make your kind of dreams and goals and aspirations a reality? They gave me a little of my background. My parents, they came to this country, well, my father came to this country in 1972. He came, to study at the University of Maryland. He came to study electrical engineering. But he really came here because he was looking for the opportunities to fulfill that American dream and really be able to fulfill opportunities for myself, and a lot of your parents obviously came here to fulfill those same things as well. And so that in itself is a huge lesson in perseverance, to see that first generation really pave the way. And something that I think a lot of Koreans are very obsessed about, right? Especially being in the education business, the home business, is that they always want to know what is the blueprint to success, right? How do you go about doing it? A, B, C, and D, right? And so when you look at a company like Samsung, they copied kind of Sony's, the way Sony did it to get into the TV industry, to get into the electronics industry. Hyundai and Kia, they're kind of looking at how did Toyota do it, copying, they're making it Equus now and the Lexus. And there's a great management consultant who passed away, a gentleman named Peter Drucker, who was the mentor for Bill Gates, mentor for Jack Welch of General Electric. He was asked this question once, right? Who follows your principles best that you have ever met? Is it Bill Gates? Is it Jack Welch? And he said, no, it's none of those people. He said, it's Koreans. Right? And Koreans are so good at kind of following that blueprint, following that plan. But then what happens when you get to that level and you become the leader? Right? You have to learn to reinvent yourself and learn to really push forward to the next stage as the leader and the pace setter for many of these things, right? So right now we're on the cusp of something I think truly remarkable, right? We have a lot of great Korean companies on the rise internationally, right? You have people like Samsung and Hyundai and Kia really promoting Korean products. Even within the United States itself, a lot of great things happening as well too. Right? You have a lot of people that have risen in the ranks of many law firms or many investment banks or consulting companies or within a lot of Fortune 500 companies. You have people on the cusp in politics. I think BJ, who's one of our state reps here in Georgia, will be speaking later. And so it's a great opportunity for all of us here to push that forward and really see what we can do next. And as I said, we're all here as ambassadors, whether we like it or not, of not only ourselves, but of our families, of our communities, and of our culture and nation as a whole. Right? When people look at us and when people form opinions about what Koreans are like, our actions are going to shape the opinions of those around us. I mentioned Jay-Z earlier. I think he really understood that. I don't know if anyone, does everybody know who Jay-Z is, by the way? Rapper, R&B artist and rapper, married to Beyonce. He has a lot of great business quotes, and he always says that I'm not a businessman. He says I'm a businessman. Really understanding that he himself is a brand, he has a reputation that he has to put forth. And all of us, I think, every day need to recognize that as well. And so when we talk about what is that blueprint, right? How do we really turn, like I said, our dreams, our vision into success? I think there's a whole bunch of P's, and I'm not talking about the P's that you eat. But words that start with the letter P, kind of like perseverance, right? It's a very important ingredient to really help us get to where we want. Another P that I think is very important is also planning, right? How do you set up the preparations? How do you develop the tools so that you are able to persevere day in and day out? Another very important P is passion, right? I mean, passion is kind of the engine that really helps you drive forward toward those goals. And really lets you understand that perseverance. When we talk about branding, another P that you can use is packaging, right? How do you put all that together? How do you put forth the best aspects of your plan, the best aspects of who you are, or who your product is, so that you can really gain momentum and gain success within the marketplace. And another one, if you use it in a negative way, is kind of bad, but it is healthy in small doses, is paranoia, right? The founder of Intel, Andy Grove, used to always say that only the paranoid survive. And some of that paranoia revolves around reinvention, right? That you can't get complacent with where you are in the marketplace, right? We've seen with Japan, you've seen companies like a Sony, you see companies like a Toyota that have gotten to the top, but then what happens? Right now they're slowly sliding backwards. So how do you prevent that? How do you continue to stay as a number one or number two? I would say when I was a student at Harvard, I was very lucky in that I was able to get a chance to listen to a lot of great speakers. I had people like Jack Welch who would come and speak at the business school and allow us as undergraduates to also attend. Always say that you should always be in a business where you can be number one or number two. And so when we looked at C2 and started C2, it was really with that mindset. What could we be number one or number two in? And really feel like that we are adding value and adding a lot of good services to the community and really allow us to survive as a viable business. And it's a question that we ask ourselves each and every day. Right? How do we stay at number one and number two? And so today I will say that we are probably the number one provider in individualized college admissions preparation. As in the introduction, we have 178 centers. We tutor almost 30,000 students every week, and we employ over 1,500 people. So just being able to see that growth and see the lives that you're able to touch, either through employment or through the services that we provide, is something that continues to fuel that passion, right? That continues to get you up in the day, get you up in the morning, and really think about how are we going to provide the best service possible, how are we going to continue to thrive as an organization, and really put ourselves out there in a way that is extremely valuable, but also something we're very proud of, from the students to the teachers to the program directors to even myself on a day in, day out basis. So just taking a step back, I think the lessons of perseverance, is something that I always try to pick up on, every day. I think studying history, studying, kind of, where the first generation or even prior to that, kind of what they went through is something that was always on my mind as I was growing up as a student. Right? My grandfather used to always talk about the Japanese occupation. My mother would talk about, kind of the post-war Reconstruction and kind of what was going on in Korea. And then even talking about the early stories of immigrating to this country, not knowing the language, not knowing where to even buy groceries, something as simple as that. Back in 1973, 1974, when my mom came here, there was no H mart, right? So where are you going to go buy the ingredients to make kimchi? Where are you going to go buy sticky rice? Right? All they sold was Uncle Ben's. Right? And so these were obviously different struggles that they had to go through, and being able to pave that path and make things easier for us. They've gotten to a certain level, and now want us to see. Now they want to be able to see us get to the next level. I think is a goal that they all have in mind. I know a lot of our parents, kind of when they came here, they only knew a certain definition of success, right? That if you become a doctor, if you become a lawyer, or if you become an accountant, that's considered success. And many of us have already got there. But to become leaders within, I think, the United States specifically, it's really being able to take hold of leadership, really grasp those entrepreneurial skills that our parents had and apply it at the next level. And we see a lot of the small businesses in this country become bigger businesses. Right? We talk about companies like Forever 21, but even other companies. A company like ADP, for example, was started by the late Senator Longberg as just a basic payroll processing company that grew into something larger and greater. It's one of the biggest economic indicators in this nation, and he had that vision to take something small into something bigger. And I think that is what really makes this country great and wonderful. And it's wonderful to see everyone here really looking forward to try to learn those opportunities, learn the skills, and get the nourishment to really get there. So talking about C2, I can tell you that when I told my mom, a young man, that I wanted to start my own business, she thought I was absolutely crazy. Right? She said, you're throwing your education away. We paid all this money to send you to Harvard. Why can't you do something normal? And while I was a student there, a lot of people, they ask you to tutor their own children. Right? They want to have some Harvard student give them some kind of magical miracle and raise their SAT scores or turn them into something wonderful. And what you found out is that that's not possible. But B, that most of the students that are coming in, they have a whole lot of potential. Right? They already have a lot of the knowledge and a lot of the skills that they need to succeed, and it's really getting the kind of the mentorship and the experience and the know-how of kind of what I myself went through as a student is what they were really looking for. And so when we looked at C2 and kind of what we could offer that was a little bit different from kind of the typical tutors or the Hagwons or the Kaplans or the Princeton Reviews, is that we can really provide that sense of nourishment. We can really provide that sense of mentoring that you wouldn't get anywhere else. And I think kind of World as well is providing that exact same framework. It's providing a similar opportunity for everyone here to really connect, make those connections, and really get that nourishment and advice from people who've gone there and seen it and done it, and let you really avoid the pitfalls and dangers that may be out there. And so that was kind of the nexus, of the idea. I mean, I think it started as more of an informal concept where, I myself and a few friends were actually tutoring students, and then, the idea became bigger, right? It became, wow, there is an opportunity in this marketplace for something different, for something that hasn't existed before. And just to take a step back, my father in 1972, when he came to the United States to study at the University of Maryland, he got a part-time job. He got a part-time job working at a 7-Eleven, and he decided to work at a 7-Eleven because he really wanted to improve his English-speaking skills. Right? He could read fine, he could write fine, but he thought that if I have to interact with a customer every day, I will be able to, improve my accent, improve my communication skills, learn various slang and idioms, talking to these customers. And so, he did this for around a year, and I think 6 months into it, there was a robbery at the 7-Eleven. Some guy was pointing a gun at the back of his head, and so he said, oh, I did it when I was younger, I did it when I was in the Army, and it was nothing special. But he just kind of did it out of ignorance. And the second time it happened, I think it happened around 6-7 months later, he said, oh, it's okay, just go ahead and take the money, right? Because he knew that his life would be in danger. But from that incident, right, he really saw this opportunity where one could provide self-defense lessons to the community at large. And so he really developed this whole model of a taekwondo dojang, and he eventually opened up somewhere between 35 to 40 locations in the Maryland, Virginia area. Ideas started forming in my mind, and what really clinched it was that an idea I think we all have every day. Right? We say, oh, that's a possibility, or that'd be nice to do, but we never kind of take that next step in terms of making that idea into a reality. And so I had the good fortune, kind of toward the end of my junior year to attend a sermon, on Harvard's campus at Men's Church, and he was telling a story, which really touched me, and I still remember the story to the day. And some of you may have already heard the story before. Is that there was a man who there was a flood that came in this neighborhood, and so this man decided to pray to God and ask him to come save me. And a few days later, this person comes on a rowboat and says, "Why don't you get in the rowboat? Let's get out of here." And the guy said, "No, I'm waiting for God to come and save me." And so a couple of days later passed, the water goes up higher, so he has to go to the second floor now of his house. And this motorboat comes around, and this guy on the motorboat says, "Hey, why don't you hop in the boat? I'll come and save you." And the guy says, "No, I'm waiting for God to save me." And the water keeps rising, and it goes up to the roof. And so the man is standing on top of this roof. This helicopter comes, drops a ladder, and asks the man, "Why don't you get on the helicopter so we get out of here?" He said, "No, I'm waiting for God to save me." Right? And so then the water comes and it kills him, and he drowns. And this man goes to heaven, and he asks God, "It's great to be in heaven, but why didn't you save me?" And God said, "Well, I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter. What the hell were you doing?" And so hearing that, it's really understanding what those opportunities are, right? And taking action when you see those opportunities is really that first step, I think, in really realizing what it is that you want to do. Right? You see these things every day, right? How do you take that next step? And I think that next step, it really requires obviously a lot of perseverance and a lot of just kind of planning as well. One more story on perseverance. I recently, my wife and I had a baby. Our baby's 8 months old, or 7.5 months old. And my wife was born in Korea, where I was born in Maryland. Right? So I'm a true Twinkie, as my wife always calls me. And I always say my wife is a Bob. She came there when she was 16. And so she's not accustomed to some of the children's stories that I grew up with. Right? And so one of the stories that was one of my favorites when I was young is the story by Dr. Seuss. I don't know if some of you know that. Do people know Green Eggs and Ham? So in Green Eggs and Ham, there's a very annoying character named Sam I Am, who keeps asking this guy, "Would you like some Green Eggs and Ham?" Right? But the thing that he does, right, he perseveres. Right? He keeps going at it. He keeps trying. He does not give up. But if you were to ask a girl, will you go out with me? Will you go out with me? Will you go out with me? After a while, it comes across a little crazy. It comes across as a little bit like stalking. Right? And there's a definition of insanity that doing the same thing over and over, thinking that you're going to get a different result means you're crazy. But Sam I Am does not do that. If people who are familiar with the story know, right? He asks in a different way every time. Would you like to eat it on a train? Would you like to eat it in the rain? Would you like to eat it with a lot of pain? Right? So he uses different tactics, different methods over and over again. And so when we talked about kind of the idea of perseverance, I think perseverance also has to be matched with this idea of being able to reassess, reinvent yourself, and really understanding what is it that the marketplace wants, or what is it that you need to do to adjust your pitch or product or whatever it is that you are trying to accomplish, so that that end goal is ultimately met. And so, kind of that story, and kind of listening to the stories of my parents, and growing up with kind of what they shared with me, I was like, I think this is a product that we can do, that we can provide a tutoring program that is kind of all-encompassing, right? Was the original idea, right? So this idea of the mentoring and providing that know-how, we really started to grasp that actually after the company was founded. So the first thing that we did is come up with a business plan, right? So in that original business plan, and planning is extremely important, because it's a discipline that forces you to think about all of the different possibilities that might happen, right? So people always say, you gotta write a business plan, you gotta write a business plan. And a lot of people don't, unfortunately. And it's not the plan that's what's important, right? It's actually the planning process that's what's most important, right? Going through that exercise, really allows you to sharpen, what your ideas are going to be. It really allows you to simplify what is the main point, right? What are you trying to drive at? What are you ultimately trying to sell? And what are you ultimately trying to do to differentiate your product from everyone else? And so, our original business plan, you have to also be financially sensitive to things. Wow, we need to get a lot of students, right? We need to get as many students as possible to financially survive and to launch this business successfully. So the original idea for C2 was actually much, much broader, right? It was to have this one-stop shop where you could come in not only for tutoring, you could come in for driver's ed, you could come in for art classes, you could come in for music classes, anything that you wanted to learn, you could come and learn it. And the reason behind that was that we would be able to attract as many different students as possible and as many diverse offerings as possible from the beginning, and all under the umbrella that we're going to provide a really outstanding tutor as part of that process. Another thing that, idea that we had in that initial business plan was that we're not going to provide any homework to any students. That's kind of crazy, I guess, some people say, but. And the reason behind that was, we looked at a lot of tutoring places, and there were a lot of tutoring places that gave a lot of homework, and they would spend, almost the entire tutoring session grading the homework, right? So, this seemed like a great opportunity. We could tell students, you have no homework, so students, oh yes, I want to go to a place that has no homework. And at the same time, we had an opportunity to really provide what we thought was more of a teaching service as opposed to a grading service, right? And so, we kind of started the business with kind of these two ideas that we're gonna pitch and differentiate ourselves. And we quickly found out that what most of our students really wanted was kind of that mentoring aspect, really understanding what the college application process was, and really have someone talk to them about kind of what are the different majors that are out there, what are the different career options that are out there, what is it that I have to do in high school to really help simplify all those choices that are around me, right? I remember when I was in high school, look, I didn't know what I wanted to major in. Even when I was in college, I didn't know what I wanted to major in. Right? I know in the introduction they said, I graduated with a degree in economics, but I first started off as an English major, and I became a public policy major. and then I finally settled on being an economics major. And so you go through those many iterations, and that learning process is very important. But if someone could have counseled me when I was younger to really help fine-tune what path was best for me, I would have loved a service like that. And so we have so many students, so many parents telling us, "Wow, this is the real value that we're getting from you guys." We quickly kind of changed what our focus was, right? Instead of being this very broad-based, one-stop shop, come here for anything, come here for anything that's related to after school, it's really focusing on that one niche. And we were really able to become, like I said, kind of either that number one or number two player in that individualized college preparation program, through focusing on that specific focus and really understanding that that's what parents want. But just because you've established and built a model that works, there's always constantly flux, there's always constantly change that's going on. So we talked about that other P being, kind of being paranoid and being aware of what's going on, in the marketplace. And if you have a question, if you do have a question, you can go ahead and raise your hand and ask. But I'll try to save that for the end. And it's kind of going back to the paranoia. Let me take a step back. The planning is something that is, I can't emphasize how important the planning is, right? So myself, for our organization, we create a new plan every year, right? We revisit what is it that we wanted to accomplish last year? What are the things that we wanted to do? How did we want to go about doing it, right? And we spend, almost probably a month-long exercise kind of reassessing what happened over the past year, right? What worked? What didn't work? Why did it work? Why didn't it work? And then when we look at the future for the following year, we recreate, reassess, and try to learn from the things that we failed at, as well as learn from the things that we did well. And that is a discipline that makes sure that you know what your goals are. It reminds you of who you are and who you're not. And it really allows you to get the tools to really grind it out and persevere day in, day out. Right? We're talking about perseverance. Perseverance is, yes, it's a characteristic that says I'm not going to give up, but it's also habit forming as well, right? That you can have the tools to get better at perseverance vis-a-vis planning, right? That if you have a plan, that you set milestones, that you set goals, it's really going to force that discipline upon you, right? When we talk to students, right, just taking a step backwards, we always say, what's your study plan, right? What's going to be your study schedule? If you know that you want to get an A in a math class, what do you need to do each month? What do you need to do each week? Let's go back and revisit it. Did you do it? Did you not do it? And the same thing applies to what we do in business. I mean, a lot of things, they don't go according to plan, but it's that discipline, right? It's that reminder of taking a look, reassessing, and knowing what it is that you want to do and why you didn't get there is a very, very important exercise that I cannot overemphasize. This idea of continual improvement is something that myself and I as an organization take very seriously. I mean, I myself, believe it or not, also have a tutor. I was telling my students that not only are you guys getting tutoring, I get tutoring as well too. I have a wonderful coach. I've been very fortunate in being able to meet some great people to guide me along the way. But revisiting, kind of your goals is also taking a look at what's going to happen in the future. What are the things that are changing? I had a great conversation with one of the attendees here earlier, and we were talking about kind of the technological changes in education. It is something that I worry about every day. Kind of how is education going to change if you're going to be learning off a tablet, if you're going to be learning online, if you're going to be learning through a computer as opposed to paper and pencil, and whether or not those changes are going to take hold and be firm. And so it's constantly learning, constantly being aware, constantly knowing what's going on that's all around you, right? When you look at a company like Microsoft, for example, Bill Gates, unfortunately, has created kind of a poor image for himself. I don't know if many of you saw him shake hands with the Korean president. He was kind of like, how are you? And, but it's indicative of where the organization of Microsoft is going, right? that they missed out on the whole idea that that there's going to be cloud-based computing, that you're going to be able to do things through your telephone or through a tablet, and they really stuck to that one model for such a long time, and failed to recognize that there's this whole lot more possibilities that they need to be prepared for, that they need to worry about as the future goes on. And so, when you get to a level of maturity in an organization, it's really being able to look at that and being able to be nimble around it. I know the big topic was perseverance. One more thing in perseverance I think that's very important to also keep in mind is this idea of consistency, right? If you think about what it means to persevere, it's to consistently do something day in, day out, right? And consistent execution, I'll say, is really one of the reasons why a company succeeds or doesn't succeed. So if you look at the late 80s and early 90s, right, the difference between an American car and a Japanese car is actually very small, right? I think the failure rate of a Japanese car was around 4% and a US car was 6%, right? There's only a difference of 2% difference in the failure rate of an automobile that gave the impression that a Japanese car has so much better quality than an American car, right? And it's that consistent execution that also helps one build your personal trust and personal rapport, whether it's in negotiating a deal, whether it's working with your employees and your team. You have to always be fair, friendly, and firm on a consistent basis. And it's the lack of consistency that really creates mistrust or this image of undependability within the marketplace. Why is it that something like made in China has such a bad reputation versus something like made in Germany or made in Japan? It's really that understanding of consistency and stability and quality. The thing that drives me crazy is, and I'm sure many of you have had this experience, especially when you go to a Korean restaurant, is that one day you go to a Korean restaurant and food tastes amazing, right? And you can go 2 months later and the food tastes awful, right? And then you start having this bad impression of what is the food that you can expect from that particular establishment? What is the service you can expect from a particular establishment? What is the type of quality of product that you can expect from a certain establishment? And so that idea of consistency in terms of delivering a product, in terms of how you interact with individuals, is really going to help establish that brand and that other P, called packaging. And as I mentioned earlier, right, we are all ambassadors, of kind of what it means to be Korean to non-Koreans throughout the world, right, whether we like it or not. I know my mom used to always get upset at me. She said if I acted like a bum in public, you would say that my parents weren't good parents. I'm sure many of you have heard something similar to that. And that idea, I think, needs to be drilled in not only at the family level or at the personal level, but at the organizational level, and even at the level of us as an ethnic group and a country at large. And so, I really encourage everyone to think about, kind of what is it, and what are those opportunities that come along the way that we feel like we can, really make a difference in, that we can really become the leaders in, whether it's as entrepreneurs, whether it's in public service, or whether it's through, even the current place that you work in, right? And we want everyone here to be elevated to that next level, right? Because that second generation is really going to be, the people that are going to really take things forward, that are really going to take it to that next level, and really make, I think, everyone in South Korea very proud, but also, just our entire, culture and group as a whole, extremely excited about as we move forward. Are there any questions? I know it's been a long lecture. Maybe that's an hour today. Yes?
You mentioned earlier that your company does yearly planning.
Yes. Are
you able to share with us some metrics that you use to measure your performance, and if you revisit that every year as well? Can you talk about the metrics?
Yeah, so obviously a company has to be solvent, sales are also what are your margins, right? So you got to look at what your profitability is, right? So you look at profit margins. You look at, you try to assess market share in certain ways, right? So you can, we take surveys of, how many students come from a certain school, and so you can kind of infer market share from that perspective. We also have goals in terms of student enrollments. Have we increased our student enrollment? Have we decreased our student enrollment? Then you also do surveying as well too, right? There's a great tool called Net Promoter Scores. I'm sure you're familiar with it at American Express. That really takes a look at who's happy, who's not happy, and kind of look at how do you compare to other industries, right? Not every industry might have a score like that, but I work on the board of the Atlanta Zoo. We have NPS scores. Right? We score like in the 93 range, which is amazing. Right? Amazon has them. So you can look at other industries that are similar to kind of see where do you fall and how do you compare. We look at how many points have students improved on SAT scores since we're an education business. Right? You want to be able to measure things. Right? So as part of your planning, you want to think about how do I know that I'm successful? Right? How do I know that I'm doing a good job? Right? So in baseball, you have batting averages, you have how many home runs did I hit, how many triples did I hit, what's my ERA? Right? I don't know if anyone following baseball, right? There's number 99, right? Rube. He's doing great. He's got a great ERA, he's got a great strikeout to walk ratio. Whatever business that you're doing, you want to be able to look at those things too. If you're in manufacturing, what is your defect rate? What is the satisfaction rate amongst the customers that you have? How are your customers using it? You want to be able to listen to what your customers are saying. One of the big things I get out of really being involved in the community and doing things outside of C2 is really hearing that voice, right? The minute you stop hearing the customer's voice, the minute you stop hearing kind of what's going on in your community, your product is going to lose direction, or whatever service that you want to provide is going to lose direction, and it's not going to be as fine-tuned and in-tuned as you like. So I think that's a wonderful question. I mean, it's really interesting kind of. And then you can also turnover rates, right? There's other things. How good are you as a manager? Satisfaction rates amongst employees. Does that help? Yes.
저는 다른 질문인데요. 우리 미국이 퍼블릭 스쿨이 너무 점점 안 좋아지고 있잖아요.
네.
그런 점에서 우리 C2는 아직은 학원이지만 한국은 이제 그런 교육 시스템이 우리가 볼 때는 나쁘지만 오바마 대통령이나 이렇게 많이 좋다고 칭찬을 많이 해주잖아요. 그래서 C2처럼 이렇게 멘토링 해주고 그런 시스템이 아주 좋은 것 같아요. 근데 그래서 요즘에 차로 스쿨이나 이런 스쿨 시스템이 많이 프라이빗한 회사들이 많이 들어오고 있잖아요. 근데 C2는 아직은 학원이지만 앞으로 그런 퍼블릭 스쿨이나 그런 차로 스쿨 시스템의 비즈니스 모델로 혹시 그런 건 어떤지 궁금한 점이 생기네요.
Yeah, so did everyone understand the question? Whether or not C2 is going to go into the charter school or private school space? There are some actually great charter school models out there. There's one called KIP, the Knowledge is Power program, and they really integrate a lot of the things that which we're talking about here, right? Things like perseverance, things like planning, things like knowing how to package yourself. A lot of those schools are really geared toward more inner city and more disadvantaged youths who also kind of suffer from a cultural divide, believe it or not, right? That there are many people within inner cities that don't know how to have a conversation with an adult. They don't know how to make eye contact. They don't know how to shake someone's hand. And they actually teach all these things from A to Z. And have really been able to provide, I think, in my mind, a great program. But in terms of C2 going into kind of the charter school space, for us, we really want to stay focused, right? We always feel like there's always going to be an opportunity for us in the after-school tutoring market, just because it's so competitive getting to college. So even if schools get better, right, people will still go to tutor. People still want to get that advantage to go to an Ivy League school or to get into one of the top state schools or top private colleges. No matter how much the level of schooling goes up. So if you go to Korea, right, the level of schooling is great, but people go to even more tutoring, right? So we want schools to get better, because as schools get better, people actually look for more outside tutoring. It's kind of a weird thing. When schools are worse, people look for less tutoring. It's very strange, people's mentality. So it is something that we look at and we encourage, right? But that we ourselves are not comfortable getting into, because we are very accustomed to more one-on-one, right, individual program versus kind of a group-based program, which is very different, right? A group-based program, in terms of kind of the management, in terms of the logistics, becomes a different beast. The other problem that I would say with kind of going to the charter school space is that you do become very dependent on government funding, right? So if government funding changes, those businesses can go out of business tomorrow, right? So when George Bush was president, he had the No Child Left Behind program, and there were a lot of companies that made a lot of money in SES, the supplemental education space, which is basically getting government funds to tutor kind of more disadvantaged children. All those businesses have gone out of business because Obama changed, kind of how No Child Left Behind is being done, and there is no more tutoring, and going into this STEM initiative. And so I would say no. And the other big issue with the charter schools right now is technology, right? That there's going to be more online schools, there's going to be more massive learning that can change how charter schools function and what the economics of a charter school can be like. So because of those three reasons, the answer is no.
간단한 질문일 수도 있지만요. 사실 제가 저분이 질문에서는 질문하고 싶었지만 질문하고 대답해 주셔서 감사하고요. 그냥 이거는 되게 simple question일 수도 있지만 I want to know your long-term vision. How you see yourself in 10, 20 years from now in education industry. Like, what is your long-term, like, 어떻게 이제 when you look at back 20 years and then yeah, I'm going to be successful in this area. That's the long-term vision.
20 years, I hope I'm retired in 20 years. Fishing, playing golf maybe, but in terms of C2, we do have a 5-year plan, right? So our next 5 years, we see a lot of opportunities to continue to grow, the existing model, within this country. There's a lot of, America's a huge country. Right, you look at how many Chipotles there are, you look at how many Starbucks there are. There's a lot more opportunity, for us even, because college now is what high school was 50 years ago, right? 50 years ago, as long as you graduate from high school, you get a good job, right? Now in the United States, the minimum you have to do is graduate college, even to get a job as a security guard or even a teller, right? So it's the bar of learning has gone up substantially and gotten more competitive. I think the other thing is that with some of the reforms to colleges, right, with financial aid and how colleges can charge for tuition, as well as kind of the whole college ranking system that the Department of Education is providing, which includes how many people graduate within 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, how many people actually get a job, what's the average income for people graduating these colleges, is going to really put, I think, a lot more colleges out of business. Right? A lot of the for-profit colleges already are suffering from that fate. So when you have a fewer number of colleges, right, you have a smaller supply and you have more demand, I think it's only going to get more competitive in our particular industry. So the short-term goal for the next 3 to 5 years is really being able to go from around 178 centers by the end of this calendar year to probably around close to 400 to 500 centers in 4 or 5 years. Another big space that you can't underestimate though is the growth in China. Right? We get calls almost on a weekly basis about when are we gonna move into China as a business, just because there's so many people in Shanghai, in Beijing, in Shenzhen, whose population is as big as, or half as big as the United States, right? And because of the one-child rule, there's so many dollars that are being able to flow to that one child to be able to invest in. And a lot of them want to come to the United States for college, just because Peking University is very crowded and kind of similar to Korea. It's a little bit crazy. But from our experience, we opened in Korea around 5-6 years ago. And when you expand internationally, you have to pick the right partners. You have to really understand what the government laws are like. You have to really understand what are all the restrictions, right? In education business, I don't know if anyone ever done education business in Korea. It's very highly regulated, right? How business, you can't open past 10 p.m. You can't charge more than a certain dollar. You can't open near 노래방. You can't open near a bar. I mean, there's radius restrictions. The type of background checks you have to do on people. It's a very, very restrictive business in Korea. How much you have to pay somebody. The one good thing about being an education business in Korea is that you don't pay any taxes, right? You have to pay 3% income tax if you're educators, which is a great thing. And so, and even knowing those rules in Korea, it was still difficult to launch a business. And so when you look at a country like China, you really have to know who are those people that have the connections to the government that can really pave the way, that can really make things easier. Because over there, if you pick the wrong partner, I mean, you can be put out of business pretty quickly. So when we look at your question, the 20-year framework, I think looking internationally, I think it's very important. I think looking at a technology portion of our organization, whether it's doing one of these really massive, massively large tutoring programs or schools or colleges, I think that's definitely the future of education.
이건 왜냐하면 궁금한 게 지금 우리는 미국에 살면서 1.5세 2세잖아요. 10살 되는 right? 근데 사실 보면 미국에는 케임브리지 세우는 학교도 있고 그 다음에 흑인 학교도 있고 커리지도 있고 그 다음에 그런 마이너리티들 세우는 학교가 있는데 우리 한국 사람으로서 don't you have that vision that you want to set up, secondary education or 한국 사람 학교는 우리 한국 사람을 위한 미래를 위해서 투자할 만한 그런 생각이 없는지 혹시?
Well, I mean, that's separate from business, right?
So that's why I asked your personal vision and goal.
No,
not just business.
Yeah, so personal goals are different from business goals, and yeah, when you see things like that, it's always you feel a little envious, right? Obviously, the Jewish community has great Jewish community centers. They have wonderful Hebrew schools. I have a good friend who sends his daughter to Hebrew school, and obviously teaching Korean culture, as Boyd spoke earlier, that really being able to speak both fluently as part of this group and being able to do business between here and Korea is extremely important. It's not only being able to speak the language, right? I mean, there's one thing for me to be able to speak the language, but also you have to understand what is the culture, the 문화, and what are the things that you have to do. Right? I joked about Bill Gates earlier, right? He didn't know how to shake the president of Korea's hand, and it looked very disrespectful. Even though he probably didn't mean any disrespect at all, if you really think about it, right? But he just comes across that way. Whereas, I think the Facebook president, he did a little research and what's the culture and how do you shake that person's hand, or what is the Korean people love to drink, what is the drinking culture, right? There's a lot of rules, right? And understanding that, especially for I think students who grow up here, is extremely important. And so I am involved in an organization, it's a nationwide organization, the Center for Korean Americans. That's really being able to provide mentorship more on a professional level. But I do know that one of the goals that the president of that group, a good friend of mine, Sam Yoon, is really being able to promote the cultural aspects within those who are born here, as well as to those people who live in America, so that they better understand what Korean Americans go through. So one day.
질문 없습니까? 하나만.
네.
Can you share with us the obstacles you have faced along the way, as you yourself or as a citizen, and how you resolve those obstacles?
Yes, I mean, I think the first obstacle in starting to see too is that a lot of people say, tell you no, you cannot do this, and you your idea is crazy, or you're going to go out of business. And it creates a lot of worry when you have so much negativity around you. And so I think when you plan something out and you write something down and you put all your ideas out on paper, it's really looking for that point, really looking for what is that one thing that you can hold on to? What is that simple idea that's going to keep your faith, that's going to allow you to persevere is so important. And I think about C2 when we first started, when you wrote everything down, is that we really believe we can provide a product that's going to better help students than anything that's out there. We absolutely believe that, and we believe that if we can do that, we will be successful, right? And so always keeping that faith, I think A is very important. B, it takes time to build a business. It always takes longer than what you think it's going to be, right? You think, wow, we're going to get to this stage in 1 year. No. It'll probably take 5 years. You think it's going to take that 5 years? No, it's probably going to take you 10, 15 years, right? And so, being able to maintain the same habits, being able to maintain the same actions on a daily basis and not get discouraged, not get bored, is extremely important, right? I don't want to say it's like being like a factory worker, but you have to do the same thing each day. I think C, being very self-aware of your emotions and your how you feel is extremely important, right? So wow, it's tough. I can't tell this. You look like you're worried, or you look like you're having a bad day. Who's going to buy your product? Who's going to believe you as a person, right? So you have to always remind yourself, why am I doing this each morning? As soon as you get out of the car, as soon as you're in a public place like this, you have to be able to, wow, yes, I'm confident in my product, even if I'm not, right? Even if I have doubts, you have to show that belief. Because if you can't show that belief, how are you going to convince anyone of that belief, whether it's an employee or whether it's a customer that you have? So, reminding yourselves of that, I think is those three things. Kind of we talked about the packaging, we talked about the perseverance. They're all interrelated, right? As our organization has grown, not getting complacent, not getting overly comfortable. What are the goals we're going to set for next year? Going back to that planning process is extremely important, right? You never, there's a question, when do you feel successful? And I always tell my wife, I never feel successful, right? I always feel like I could have done better yesterday, and that I'm going to do better tomorrow, right? What did I learn from yesterday that I can do better? Is a question I always ask. Every day I drive home, I always think about, what could I have done better today? How could I have, managed people better? How could I have really motivated people better? How could we have really helped students better? It's a question you have to constantly ask yourself, right? I'm a happy person, so I don't want people to think that I'm unhappy. But it is a discipline and a practice that you have to put in, right? And so as we grow, it's just constantly reminding yourself about that. And as you grow, people, right? It's another P. People are so important, right? I mean, C2 has been able to grow because we've really had great people within our organization, right? That you don't succeed alone. Nobody succeeds alone, right? You're here today to learn from one another, to network, to grow as individuals. These are the people here to help you. Likewise, if you start your own company, you will start recruiting people. People are so important. So, the last thing I would say is that when you pick people, you really want to, have people on your team that really share your values, that really share your belief, right? That's part of the planning process. When we started C2, we really thought, what does C2 mean? What are the values that we want as an organization, and what are the values that we want to show to other people outside of the organization, right? So you could get really good teachers, who went from great schools. Maybe you don't have the best personalities, right? Do you really want that to be the image that students have, that parents have of your company or of you as an organization? Because that person is going to be a direct reflection of you, whether you like it or not, right? So when we talked about you are an ambassador for all of Korea, whether you like it or not, the people you hire will become ambassadors for who you are, right? So the type of people you decide to recruit recruit, the type of people that you decide to work with, they are actually an extension of you. And so you really want to make sure that those values and those beliefs are strongly held by them. And that's the job as the owner or as the boss or as the leader, is to constantly remind everyone what those values are, what that culture is, right? We are nothing more than our culture and the name that we have. I know we have some of our people from C2 here, I don't want to say it, making a profit is another key. It's actually not everything, right? As long as you have great people, you have a great organization and a great culture, wherever you go, whatever you do, you will always be successful.
What does C2 mean?
C2, we started in, it's a little bit nerdy. We started in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and there's Cambridge Square, so you have the C2. Yeah, but then it was too nerdy for people. People thought we were. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much.